Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here, as always, is pretty simple. We take a whole stack of dense, really critical information, we find the core insights, and then we serve them up so you can walk away well-informed and, well, ready to apply that knowledge.
Exactly.
And today, we are diving deep into the strategic blueprint for a successful AI implementation. We're not just talking about the dazzling possibilities of AI, the sci-fi stuff.
Not at all.
We're looking at the rigorous methods that are being used by the companies that are actually achieving, truly game-changing results with it right now.
Precisely. And we're moving, entirely past the theoretical conversation, past that what-if stage, and focusing on what you could almost call the applied science of organizational success with AI.
The applied science, I like that.
We've got this new research from NTT DATA that meticulously, and I mean really meticulously, dissects the strategic playbook of companies that have moved from just, dabbling.
Right, running a few pilots here and there.
Exactly, or running these tentative proofs of concept to truly excelling with AI integration at scale.
And that distinction is everything, isn't it? Dabbling versus excelling. It's the difference between standing still and, frankly, winning the market.
It is.
So for you, listening right now, whether you're prepping for a high-stakes board meeting, or maybe you're just trying to justify next year's R&D budget, or you're guiding your whole organization through this digital transformation, understanding these exact methodologies, this is the shortcut.
It really is.
We're trying to extract the concrete strategies, the organizational requirements, and the disciplined approaches that have let a very select group of leaders just break away from the rest of the pack.
And I think the central theme that the research really hammers home is that success isn't a function of the quality of the algorithm you buy. It's a function of the quality of the operating model you build around it. And that strategic approach, it demands a profound degree of organizational readiness and long-term commitment that most companies, they just haven't achieved it yet.
That is a powerful claim. It suggests AI failure isn't a tech failure. It's a management failure.
At its core, yes. I think that's a fair summary.
Okay, so let's unpack this. If we accept that these leaders are surging ahead, what does disciplined, large-scale AI implementation actually look like in practice? And how are these companies structured to make it happen? I think we have to start by defining who we're even talking about. What is an AI leader?
That's the right place to start. And the definition of an AI leader, at least according to this research, is it's highly selective. These are not organizations that just launched a successful pilot in, say, the marketing department.
Okay, so it's not a one-off win.
Not at all. They are organizations that have already executed successful scaling. So they've integrated AI capabilities, whether that's predictive, generative, or prescriptive into their core revenue-driving business processes.
So they've moved way beyond the experimentation phase. They've achieved what you might call organizational escape velocity.
Escape velocity, that's a perfect way to put it. And we should probably clarify what that means in, real business terms for you listening.
Yeah, good idea.
It's not just a feeling of momentum. It means they've reached this critical mass of AI usage that fundamentally changes their competitive structure. It's quantifiable.
So you can actually see it on the balance sheet.
You can. It might manifest as, say, a documented 20% reduction in operational costs compared to their competitors because of deep automation. Or maybe it's a 30% increase in market share because they can offer personalization features that are, well, technically impossible for their rivals to replicate without similar internal structures.
So it's measurable, it's defensible, and it's systemic. It's baked into the business.
Exactly.
That's a much clearer benchmark. So they haven't just tried AI, they've structured their business around it in a way that generates this real measurable advantage. And this tracks with the report's finding that so many other businesses are, and I'm quoting here, still finding their footing. They're stuck in that pre-escape velocity stage, where AI is probably seen as more of a cost center, not a value creator.
That's the stagnation zone. That's what we see everywhere. They might be running 5 different proofs of concept, using a mix of vendors and open source models. But because these projects are isolated, because they lack any kind of centralized data governance, they just never transition into enterprise-scale solutions.
They die on the vine.
They do. The leaders, by contrast, they're the select few who have broken away from that pack by making success systematic, not accidental.
And the mechanism for pulling ahead is probably the most profound insight in this whole set of data. The key differentiator is the adoption of robust strategies and disciplined methodologies. And that just removes luck from the equation entirely, doesn't it?
It does.
It implies that if you adopt these methods, you stand, an excellent chance of joining those leaders.
Absolutely. Success here is not random. It's manufactured through, you could call it, rigorous management science. But those two terms, robust strategy and disciplined methodology, I think we need to explore those more deeply.
Yeah, I was going to say they're often used interchangeably.
They are, but they perform really distinct and crucial roles in this AI playbook.
Okay, let's lean into that. They sound similar.
Yeah.
But if the research is highlighting them separately, there must be a critical functional difference. So how should you, listening at home, mentally separate robustness from discipline in the context of AI?
Okay, so a robust strategy is fundamentally about comprehensive planning and anticipation. It is the intellectual rigor that goes into the blueprint.
The blueprint, okay.
For AI, robustness means covering all of your bases before you execute. So ensuring you have a clear data monetization strategy, defining governance models for model risk and performance, anticipating the long-term talent pipeline you're going to need.
And the ethical guardrails, I imagine.
And setting clear ethical guardrails for the model's behavior out in the real world. A robust strategy ensures you have a strong, well-engineered foundation that can withstand change and scale effectively.
So robustness is all about covering the what and the why. It's making sure that foundation is sound and complete. It prevents strategic failure from, an oversight like forgetting to account for model explainability requirements in a highly regulated industry.
Precisely. It's the foresight. If the strategy isn't robust, any success you manage to achieve will be fragile. It'll be built on sand.
Right.
You might deploy a great model, but if you didn't plan for data quality issues over time, that model will very quickly degrade. And that leads to technical debt and a loss of trust from the business.
But a robust plan, no matter how brilliant, means nothing if you can't actually execute it. And that brings us directly to the concept of discipline.
Correct. So discipline methodology is the consistent, rigorous application of that strategy over time. It is the organizational commitment to execution. We often use the gym analogy. Robustness is having the perfect, custom-designed workout plan written by the world's best trainer. Discipline is showing up every single day for 3 years and executing that plan exactly as written.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Even when the business cycle is tough and you feel immense pressure to just, skip a session.
I see. So discipline is where the company ensures that execution actually matches intent. It means that if the robust strategy says, all AI projects must use standardized MLOps tooling and adhere to the central data catalog, then the discipline is the mechanism.
It's enforcement.
Right, the auditing, the budget control, the training,
Right.
that ensures every single team actually complies, even,
Yeah.
the maverick teams that want to do their own thing.
It's all about consistency. A lack of discipline is what leads to shadow IT projects, siloed data lakes, and initiative fatigue.
I've seen that a lot.
We all have. If the organization commits, say, 20% of its budget to AI transformation, discipline ensures that that 20% is protected, it's allocated correctly, and it's not diverted when, short-term revenue targets are missed. The leaders excel because they view AI execution as a marathon of continuous, rigorous application.
So lack of robustness leads to strategic gaps and unforeseen risks. Lack of discipline leads to initiative failure because of resource starvation and inconsistent execution. The AI leaders have fundamentally solved both of these organizational hurdles.
And that combination is what builds the competitive moat. So the initial takeaway for you, the learner, is absolutely vital here. AI success is not a technology acquisition problem.
Say that again?
It is not a technology acquisition problem. It is a dual management problem that requires the foresight of meticulous planning, that's robustness, combined with the grit and decisiveness of consistent action, and that's discipline.
It sounds incredibly simple when you boil it down like that, but I imagine the difficulty lies in the sustained political will and the willingness to structure the entire company around these principles.
That's where the work is.
So that sets the foundation. Now, let's look at the implementation, the non-negotiable elements found in the playbooks of these AI leaders. The research, it distills their approach down into 4 key strategic pillars, and they're all focused on providing clear direction and unwavering commitment.
Right. This is the practical manifestation of that robustness and discipline we were just talking about working together.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
These pillars demonstrate how they transform these abstract organizational values into tangible, repeatable processes that actually drive technological deployment and scaling.
We'll start with pillar one, which is, I think, maybe the most critical for coherence. Clear, long-term vision for integration. They call it the North Star.
And the detail here, you just can't overstate it. Leaders prioritize a clear long-term vision for AI integration. They treat it as foundational, not as some departmental silo or a short-term project.
It's not a hobby.
It is not a hobby. This isn't just about saying we use AI. It's about defining how AI alters the core value proposition of the business itself.
And what we see in the companies that are struggling, the dabblers we mentioned, is the exact opposite of this, right? It's the piecemeal, opportunistic approach.
Yes.
A department sees a cool new tool, they buy it, they use it for a quick efficiency gain, and then it just exists in isolation, completely disconnected from the company's larger data architecture and its strategic goals.
And the problem with that piecemeal approach is that it creates fragmentation. And fragmentation kills scale. It's as simple as that. If you have a long-term vision, let's say, we will redefine personalized medicine by using AI to predict adverse drug interactions 48 hours before a human physician could ever spot them, well, then every single decision you make,
Everything.
from data ingestion to model deployment, must align with that central coherence-giving objective.
That means the AI strategy isn't owned by the chief technology officer alone. It can't be. It has to be a board-level mandate that forces integration across all the departments, from customer interaction flows to, like, the deepest layers of supply chain management.
Exactly. It ensures that projects don't compete for resources, but they cohere toward a single, powerful outcome.
It also forces prioritization, I'd imagine.
It absolutely forces prioritization. If a short-term project is exciting, but it doesn't feed into that 5 or 10-year North Star, a disciplined leader is prepared to kill that project.
Even if it looks good on a quarterly report.
Especially then. They kill it to protect the resources and the focus of the foundational initiatives. The rule here is coherence over novelty.
I understand the commitment required for that long-term vision. But here's the inherent challenge, which transitions us perfectly to Pillar 2. Agility to adapt the flexible mindset.
Ah, the paradox.
It is a paradox. The research notes that despite this clear long-term vision, these companies maintain the agility to adapt as technology evolves. To me, that sounds like a constant negotiation against inertia.
It is the ultimate strategic tension. How do you balance firm, multi-year commitment with the radical technological change we've seen in, the last 24 months alone?
Right. Foundational models are emerging and rewriting the competitive landscape seemingly overnight. If your vision is fixed, how do you stop that vision from becoming obsolete?
That's a great question.
So, is it truly possible to maintain a stable foundational vision while technical means of execution are just constantly shifting under your feet?
The answer is yes, but it lies in compartmentalization and abstraction. The commitment from Pillar 1 is to the business outcome, the destination, the competitive advantage you want to create. That goal is stable.
Okay, the what is stable?
The what is stable, the technical path to get there, that's Pillar 2, that has to be fluid and modular. Agility is enabled by your technical structure.
Could you detail what that technical structure actually looks like? Because for a big organization to just swap out a core component, I mean, that sounds like a massive undertaking that most businesses would absolutely dread.
It is, if you haven't planned for it. And this is where we see the payoff of that robustness we laid out earlier. The leaders, what they do is they employ advanced MLOps frameworks. That's machine learning operations.
MLOps, right.
They use things like containerization and standardized APIs that abstract the underlying models from the application layer.
So they decouple them.
They decouple them. And this architectural decision means that if a new, more efficient large language model emerges tomorrow, the engineering effort to swap out the older model, it's like exchanging a powerful engine in a race car, is minimal.
So the application interface that talks to the model doesn't care if it's running on Model A from vendor X or Model B from vendor Y.
Exactly.
As long as the inputs and outputs meet those standardized API requirements. This infrastructure flexibility prevents them from being locked into outdated technology.
It allows for rapid incorporation and, just as importantly, decommissioning of tools. Agility also requires constant market sensing, so having dedicated teams that are just assessing emerging technologies and governance structures that can fast-track new tech adoption without compromising the security or data integrity standards they defined in their robust strategy.
So they built their infrastructure for change.
They've built for change, ensuring the fixed business intent is achieved via fluid technology choices.
That technical agility is critical, but it requires serious financial backing, which brings us directly to Pillar 3, the ultimate proof of discipline, firm decisions, and resource commitment. The detail on the research is just unambiguous on this. Leaders are not afraid to make firm decisions and commit resources to their AI initiatives.
This is where strategic rhetoric meets reality. A robust strategy and an agile infrastructure are, well, they're worthless if the organization starves the project of oxygen. Commitment requires putting significant resources. So, financial backing, dedicating your top human capital, and allocating focused time where the strategic priorities actually are.
The common failure point for the laggards, it seems, is treating AI as a discretionary expense. It's something that gets cut first during a market downturn. How do the leaders protect this commitment during periods of economic pressure?
They embed it into the capital expenditure model. They often treat data infrastructure and model development as core IP creation, rather than just an IT cost.
That's a key reframing.
It's a huge reframing. They often establish centralized centers of excellence, or COEs, with multi-year funding mandates. That structure gives the AI teams financial predictability and the political shield they need to tackle those long-horizon, high-friction projects.
So it sounds like commitment isn't just about the dollar amount. It's about the organizational authority that's granted to the AI teams.
It is. Lack of resource commitment, especially the commitment of human capital, your best data scientists, your top engineers, that leads to initiative fatigue.
And then they leave.
And then they leave. The projects stall, the high-quality talent leaves, and it just reinforces the failure loop. Leaders commit to talent retention through competitive compensation and, crucially, by giving their teams the authority to disrupt the internal processes necessary to make the AI work.
That's a big one.
It's huge. You cannot deploy a transformative force without giving the team the authority to dismantle the old process first.
That necessary destruction, that willingness to disrupt your own internal processes, that is the true cost of discipline.
Absolutely. And finally, Pillar 4 closes the loop, and it demonstrates why this discipline has to be continuous. Continuous refinement and scaling the feedback loop. The detail is that the discipline approach allows leaders to continually refine and scale their efforts as they garner insights and learn from their experiences.
This confirms that for the AI leader, the work is never really finished. Deployment is just the beginning of a whole new cycle.
It is the perpetual machine. The leaders understand that real-world data is inherently messier and more complex than any training data you can create. So once a model is deployed, it starts generating new proprietary insights, performance metrics, user behavior data, signals about model drift. They don't just deploy and walk away. They institutionalize the process of monitoring, learning, and immediate reintegration.
Let's get specific about the mechanics of refinement here. What kind of metrics are they monitoring that drive this continuous feedback loop?
Okay, so beyond the standard stuff like uptime and latency, they are rigorously monitoring metrics that could indicate a potential strategic failure.
Okay.
Key examples would include model drift, so how quickly the real-world data is diverging from the training data, which then necessitates retraining. They also monitor data quality alerts in real time so they can catch upstream changes in business operations that might be feeding bad data into the model.
Oh, okay.
And crucially, they monitor the business KPIs the model was designed to impact, not just the technical KPIs.
That's a big difference.
It's everything. If the model is 99% accurate, but it's only delivering 5% of the expected revenue uplift, the feedback loop triggers a strategic refinement, not just a technical fix.
That makes the summary here really clear for me. AI success is inherently iterative, and the leaders have built this non-stop, disciplined mechanism to ensure that real-world deployment generates proprietary learning, which is then immediately fed back into the system to improve accuracy, expand the solution's scope, and just accelerate the advantage over their competitors.
They treat every deployment as a large-scale experiment that generates insights that nobody else has. And this systematic process of continuous refinement, it enhances their competitive advantage exponentially, because the laggards are only just starting when the leaders are already iterating on version 5.0.
We've thoroughly covered the strategic framework, the what, the why, and the how they structure their commitment. Now, I want to pivot entirely to the internal architecture, the engine that actually powers this structure, because strategy is only half the battle.
It really is.
The other half is entirely cultural. It's about building the right organizational environment.
That's right. Strategy provides the map and the resources, but culture determines whether the organization has the motivation, the skill, and the psychological safety to use them effectively.
Without a culture that's aligned with transformation.
Right. Without that, even the most robust strategic blueprint will inevitably crumble under the weight of organizational inertia.
The first component of this internal engine is, I think, straightforward in concept, but incredibly challenging to execute in a mature organization. Embracing innovation and change. The detail says AI leaders emphasize building a culture that embraces innovation and change.
And this requires a conscious, top-down effort to manage massive change. AI is not an optional tool. It demands a fundamental shift in mindset across the organization.
Right.
It's a crucial distinction from simply tolerating innovation on the side. Every single function, not just IT, has to understand the implications.
Okay, let's use a concrete example. Let's say an AI tool is introduced to automate complex document processing in the legal department. The junior paralegals who spent years developing expertise in that specific manual process, they might view the tool as a threat to their job security.
Of course they would.
And that leads to resistance, maybe hoarding of institutional knowledge, and just low adoption rates across the board.
Precisely. The leaders anticipate this friction and they address it proactively through structured change management programs. They redefine the job roles. They emphasize that the AI is augmenting the paralegal's ability, freeing them up for higher value analytical work or client interaction or strategic case preparation.
So they sell the vision of what's next for the person.
Exactly. An innovative culture is one where people feel safe and motivated to explore better, often technology-driven ways of working, because the organization has proven it will invest in their upskilling, not just look to replace them.
So the culture provides the psychological safety net that's required for individuals to accept this fundamental large-scale automation and augmentation.
That safety net is absolutely essential. It requires transparent communication about which roles will evolve and a real commitment to upskilling employees in areas like data governance, model monitoring, and just interacting with these new AI-driven systems. If the organization fails to manage the human fear of change, that fear becomes the single biggest brake on the strategy.
That understanding ties directly into the second component, which I think requires the highest level of conviction.
Yeah.
AI as a transformative force. The research says these companies understand that AI is not just a tool, but a transformative force.
And we really have to explore the depth of this conceptual shift because it separates the dabblers from the leaders most starkly.
Okay.
If you view AI as just a tool, you look at your existing business process, let's say insurance underwriting, and you ask, how can I make this 10% faster?
Find an efficiency gain.
An efficiency gain. You optimize the existing workflows, and that leads to incremental gains and cost reductions. This is optimization.
But if it's a transformative force, you ask a fundamentally different question. You ask, how can AI eliminate the need for the existing underwriting process altogether or invent an entirely new category of risk assessment that wasn't even possible before?
That is the essence of transformation. Instead of slightly improving the logistics route for your delivery fleet, an AI leader might reinvent the supply chain entirely.
How so?
Well, they might move to a predictive, localized manufacturing model that reduces shipping needs by 40% and allows for hyper-customization of the product. That isn't optimization, it's invention.
This requires extraordinary leadership bravery because transformation often necessitates cannibalizing existing profitable business units. Can you give me a high-friction hypothetical scenario where this bravery would really be tested?
Sure, think about a traditional retail bank. Their sacred cow is often their branch network, or maybe their existing call center structure, which currently handles all the customer support and sales.
Right. A huge cost center, but also a huge part of their identity.
Exactly. Viewing AI as transformative means recognizing that centralized, large-scale LLMs, combined with personalized data, could eliminate 80% of routine call volume and probably perform complex sales tasks more accurately than a human teller.
Wow.
The brave decision is not just implementing the LLM, it's deciding to proactively wind down successful but expensive parts of the branch network, knowing that the short-term cost is high, but the long-term AI-driven structure will be unbeatably efficient.
That's where commitment from Pillar 3 and culture from Component 2 just merge completely. It requires the C-suite to accept short-term pain, maybe a quarter or two of unusual costs or disruption for long-term supremacy.
Absolutely. And transformation by its very nature is messy and unpredictable, which brings us to the necessity of the third cultural component, encouraging experimentation and learning. The research shows leaders foster an environment where employees are encouraged to experiment and learn.
We've established that learning requires experimentation, and experimentation entails the possibility of failure. But how do the leaders actually institutionalize failure tolerance especially when these projects consume significant resources.
They institutionalize it both financially and psychologically. Financially, they don't treat the innovation budget or the R&D budget like the standard CapEx budget. They often ring-fence it into an innovation portfolio.
A portfolio.
A portfolio where a certain failure rate is anticipated and it's budgeted for. It's understood that out of 10 proofs of concept, maybe 3 will scale, 4 will yield crucial negative insights, and 3 will simply be sunsetted because they didn't pan out.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. The insight gained from the 7 non-scaling projects is viewed as a successful acquisition of knowledge, not a wasted expense.
So it shifts the metric of success in the R&D lab from, did this project succeed you, to something more like, how much proprietary knowledge did we gain and how quickly did we integrate that learning back into our strategic model?
It creates psychological safety. If an organization punishes teams for solutions that don't pan out, the workforce will inevitably become risk-averse. They'll stick only to proven incremental solutions, which is the antithesis of the transformative force we just discussed.
Right.
The leaders encourage rapid iteration, deploying minimum viable products, MVPs, quickly, and ensuring that project sunsetting is not viewed as a punishment, but as a clean, disciplined process of freeing up resources for the next, more informed experiment.
The cultural alignment is so crucial here. An organization that's operating with a high degree of discipline in its strategic methodology, but it's coupled with a culture that embraces change and financially enables controlled experimentation. That organization becomes fundamentally resilient.
They learn from the market and from their own failures faster than anyone else.
They turn shocks into an advantage.
They do. They actually benefit from disruptions because they are architected to learn and adapt immediately. That's the competitive engine.
Okay, let's synthesize this. Let's bring the strategy and the culture together. We have a disciplined, robust strategy built on 4 pillars, and it's powered by a culture that encourages risky, transformative change. What is the ultimate payoff for these AI leaders? The research is really clear on this. It's the ability to harness the full potential of AI.
And as we've discussed, harnessing the full potential is vastly different from harvesting the limited potential. Many companies focus purely on cost reduction, simple automation, back office optimization, and that yields incremental savings.
But the full potential, by contrast, suggests market differentiation, revenue generation, and entirely new capabilities that didn't exist before.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is the full potential implies using AI to unlock market differentiation through personalized customer experiences at scale.
Like what?
Well, think of a financial institution using predictive AI not just to flag fraud, but to proactively tailor investment products for an individual based on millions of microsignals in their transactional history.
A level of service a human could never provide.
A level of service that traditional human advisors could never provide consistently. This means entirely new forms of operational efficiency that are so deeply embedded in the business model that they become invisible to the customer but are impossible for a competitor to replicate easily.
So we're moving from AI as a tool that saves you money to AI as a creator of entirely new defensible value streams. And that's the difference between merely optimizing and achieving that escape velocity we talked about.
And that leads directly to the ultimate goal, which is driving significant competitive advantage in their respective industries. This advantage is structural, not momentary.
If we connect this to the bigger picture then, a competitive advantage built on deep, disciplined AI implementation is incredibly difficult for rivals to copy quickly. It relies on more than just, going out and purchasing a piece of software. It's a holistic construct.
It relies on 3 critical layers that take years of committed discipline to build. First, you have proprietary data assets. The leader has spent years implementing the robust governance required to structure and clean their data, making it uniquely ready for AI training. A competitor can't buy that institutional data history.
You can't just write a check for that. Okay, what's the second layer?
Second is organizational expertise. The leader has invested in the human capital, the engineers and data scientists who know how to manage, refine, and scale these complex production-grade systems. They possess institutional knowledge of what works and what doesn't within their company's specific operating environment.
So is the know-how.
It's the know-how. And third, and this is perhaps the hardest to replicate, is deep cultural alignment.
The soft stuff.
The soft stuff? That's actually the hardest stuff. The cultural mindset that embraces change, encourages experimentation, and commits resources without wavering is the foundation. A competitor can buy the software, they can hire the scientists, but they cannot instantly purchase the years of organizational learning and the cultural shift necessary to effectively wield those tools.
So the competitive moat built by an AI leader is structural, and it's constantly deepening.
Hmm.
Their systematic process, that continuous refinement loop we discussed, means they're always leveraging new data and new insights to further enhance their models and expand their scope.
Exactly. They are not just ahead, they are actively accelerating away from the laggards.
This research really confirms it then. The most significant challenge in AI today is not technological limitation.
Not at all.
It's the lack of a robust and disciplined management structure to effectively govern and scale the available technology. AI is like a mirror reflecting the quality of the organization's own operating model.
That's a perfect summary.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive. To quickly recap the key takeaways for now, AI leadership is defined by combining a clear, long-term strategic vision with the internal discipline to commit resources, financial, human, and time in fostering a culture of agile learning and transformative experimentation.
And I'd add that success in AI, therefore, is less about having the newest, shiniest algorithm and far more about having the most robust and flexible management strategy to wield it effectively. The leaders are not necessarily the ones with the deepest pockets, but the ones with the best operating model and the most consistent follow-through.
And that strategic and operational excellence is what transforms AI from an interesting feature into a world-changing, industry-defining competitive force.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to consider as you wrap up this deep dive. We discussed how AI leaders treat this technology as a transformative force, often requiring them to bravely cannibalize or even eliminate existing processes to make way for new efficiencies.
Right, the retail bank branch network example.
Exactly. So, if AI adoption necessitates the destruction and rebuilding of the existing foundational elements of commerce, what existing sacred cow business process in your industry, the thing everyone believes is permanent or untouchable, what will be the first one to be fundamentally destroyed and rebuilt by these disciplined AI leaders who are already accelerating away from the pack?
Mull over which structural element of your current business model is the most vulnerable to AI-driven reinvention. It's the painful question, but it's the one the leaders are already answering.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.